2024 CCRPC Board of Directors meeting to order. Any changes to our agenda? Hearing and seeing none, I'm going to ask for any public comment for items that are not on our agenda. Please speak up. Anyone here for public comment? Not on the agenda. Okay. We will move on to item 3, the draft fiscal year 2024 audit. And Forrest, you said Kyle was in attendance.
Kyle is in attendance. Let's welcome Kyle.
Welcome Kyle Connors.
Now CBiz, a little bit of a name change since last year, but everything else remains the same as far as I understand. So Kyle is going to talk us through a very hot off the press draft of the FY24 audit. Thanks for pulling that together, to you, Kyle, and your staff, and recognizing that folks probably have that in their inbox as of 3 minutes ago. We're going to look at it in real time, but it is available now on the website and in your inbox. So Kyle, without any more preamble.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome.
Thanks, Forrest. Appreciate it. We'll probably do a kind of a high-end walkthrough of the financial statements today, but certainly if you have a chance to review them and you want to reach out to me with any questions you might have, certainly feel free to. Anyone on this call, I'll be happy to field your questions. So first, I want to say thank you to Forrest and to Amy for their responsiveness. We got through a lot of audit in a very short window, and certainly that wouldn't have happened without their effort. So it's much appreciated on your end as well. I'm going to share screen if I have the opportunity to. Let's see.
Looks like success, Kyle.
All right, fantastic. That's what I was hoping for. So I'm going to walk you through some of the areas that I think are probably the most important to talk about today. The first being the independent auditor's report. If you were to read through this report, you'd see that we're issuing a clean audit opinion, and that means that we feel that the financial statements are free of material misstatements. Overall, for fiscal 24, the commission had operating income of just under $100,000. And comparing all of the grants, the project matches, the local community assessments, and backing out all of your operating expenses, there was operating income of about $100,000. Once we factor in the interest expense related to your leases, as well as the pension-related activity for your participation in VEMRs, and we kind of take that non-real cash basis activity, the commission had a change in net position of a decrease of just under $12,000.
Kyle, this is Jeff. For information purposes, we don't have net incomes and deficits. We have an excess of revenues over expenses, or a deficiency of revenue versus expenses, because we're not an income generating organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is just GASB jargon and how it has to show up when we present as a business type activity, but you're spot on. We talked about last time what the district's net position looks like at the end of fiscal year, each fiscal year, compared to if the GASB 68 activity didn't exist. So the district ended with total net position of $120,000, with all of the pension liabilities factored in, as compared to if those liability, the deferred outflow, the deferred inflow didn't exist, you would have a net position of $891,000. And I know you've probably had this conversation quite a few times with your auditors, but it is important to look at the just distinction between the two, because that pension liability is not something that you're paying out like a payable. It's not something that's going to come out of pocket next year. It's an estimate of pension liability over time, over 25, 30 years, not something that's going to be due tomorrow. So I think it's imperative to look at it from both perspectives. Another area that I think is of great importance, and I'm sorry if the numbering here is a little bit small, but it's your budget versus actual. And so, you know, what we would expect as auditors year over year is that your revenue would drive your expenditures, or your expenditures would drive your revenue rather. And so you can see here that there was a pretty sizable gap between what was budgeted for revenue, 8.4 million, versus what you actually had, which was 6 million. But when we get a little bit lower here and we look at your expenses, the same is true. The offset is true. And it's predominantly in this contract service line right here. You know, if the project doesn't take place, then you don't have the expense for it. And if you don't have the expense for it, you don't have the revenue. So, you know, it'd be far more concerning from an audit perspective if these numbers were pretty inconsistent with each other, but they're not. So your revenue was 3.35 million less than what was budgeted for, and your expenditures were almost exactly the same. So no real significant concern from our perspective. What we were able to do this year, which was a little bit different from last year, just due to timing, is we were able to complete the single audit portion of the audit at the same time as the financial statement portion, which last year we split into two because we wanted the financials issued in December, and the single technically isn't due till the end of March. But I'm happy to say that we did complete the single audit at the same time as we completed the financial statement audit, which means we've completed our compliance testing. Again, this year, your largest program, which may not be true for fiscal 25, but certainly for fiscal 24, was your highway planning and construction program. So we tested to make sure any contracts that required procurement were done in accordance with state law. We made sure that the type of costs that were charged to that grant were appropriate and in compliance with what's allowable under the grant provisions. And I'm happy to note that we didn't have any findings to bring to your attention with regard to our compliance testing. And to that, as you can see here, we didn't have findings related to your internal controls over financial reporting either. No material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. So this is as clean of an audit report as we can possibly issue. So again, it's a testament to your finance team and keeping good records and you know, providing everything to us timely. So happy to answer any questions you might have. I know you all just got this report, so like I said, if something comes up that after you've had a harder look at it, certainly reach out to Forrest and he can provide my information, or reach out to me and I'll be happy to answer it for you.
Kyle, I had a quick question on our page 37, the VEMR's table, where the percentage of net pension liability is shown and seems to be somewhat trending down. When do we start to get concerned, and is 80% a better mark of where we should be? Do you have any feel on that?
Yeah, so the saying is anything under 80% is critical. Anything over 80%, you're in good shape. Being that it's a state plan, it's the VEMR's plan. It's a shared liability, and you know, I would say you probably don't have an opportunity yourselves to change that number significantly, other than making the contribution that they require from you each year. You know, while anything under 80 is technically in critical, 74% is still relatively high. Obviously, you'd rather be where you were back in 2015 at 98%. But the projections are, folks are living longer, which is great, right? And so they're constantly, projecting, changing their assumptions and trying to get as accurate numbers as they can. And, that tends to trend the number up. Obviously, you can see here, your total funding percentage actually increased from 73.5 to 74, largely due to just, good economic conditions in the year under audit.
Thank you.
I note our contribution has gone up significantly the last 2 years. I went from $93,561 in 2022 to $130,469 in 2023 and 179,116 in 2024. So we're paying more in too, Mr. Chair.
Well, may also be the, well, I won't go there.
Well, one significant factor of that is we do have some more staff, so that
We do.
that has been driving it up.
Yeah, I think salary costs in the prior year were about 1.5, which jumped up to about 1.8 in the year under audit.
Well, but it only went from 1.2 to 1.4 for the years that I was quoting. Okay, so we are paying in more. I mean, we're paying in almost, not quite, double what we paid in 2022 with about $250,000 increase in payroll covered. So we're paying more in too.
Makes me feel better. I don't want to leave us old folks stranded, in the future, the far distance future, hopefully.
And Chris, so thank you, Kyle, and actually, and for all your work. And I know it was a tight time frame for you, so thank you for the pushing it through to this date. And obviously, Forrest and Amy and Trudy, thank you for getting to this positive result, not just in giving them all the data, but the day-to-day work that results in a clean audit. So thank you for that.
Two clean audits, doesn't it count for two? the single audit and the
Okay, well, we'll give them double credit, double two gold stars. But a process standpoint, so if we had more time, we do try to get this adopted or accepted by the board before the end of the calendar year. We have a requirement to file it 6 months after the end of our fiscal year.
I'm comfortable making a motion as a member of the finance committee to accept the audit. There are some blanks in there.
Yeah,
There's some yellow numbers in it. As long as those don't materially alter the conclusions, I would move that we accept the audit. And if there's anything found by the auditors or staff that materially affects the conclusions, that it would be brought back in December.
Yeah, and brought back to the executive committee and
In
finance
December.
committee.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
I'll
I know
second.
Thank you, Garrett. Anyone wish to
Can
weigh
I-
in, discuss, go on?
Can I ask Kyle and Forrest to weigh in? Like, Kyle, are you comfortable with that? Like, is this at a close enough to finish state that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there might be some edits that formatting, those numbers might change. They're more informational than they are going to materially change, alter the constructs of the financial statements themselves.
Great.
We have a quality control reviewer who hasn't had eyes on this because, as Forrest alluded to, we just wrapped up today. They'll take a look, and it's been.
And since we don't have a board meeting next month, we have the legislative breakfast. I'd rather not have an item on it to accept the audit in front of the legislators and our invited guests.
So if I could interject quickly, and apologies, there should have been a memo outlining the process a little bit better. Unfortunately, or fortunately, Emma is so efficient getting the packet out, the memo didn't make it in. But the plan we had was to ask the board to forward the audit on to the Executive Finance Committee for final approval on December 4th during their meeting. So kind of what you're doing now is a step beyond that, which is already accepting it and then maybe hearing some changes. But our thought process was we wouldn't ask for final approval until that meeting on December 4th.
We're accepting it, Forrest. That doesn't mean
Yep.
we're approving it. That's the function of the executive committee and the finance committee. So
Okay.
I'm comfortable with saying that the board accepts the audit with a proviso that nothing changes in the areas that are still in yellow and or
Yep.
fill in the blank, doesn't materially alter the findings of the audit.
Excellent. And we could have that final determination on the 4th, and then there wouldn't need to be a December full board meeting process again. Yep.
So to summarize, Jeff
Right.
is placing the acceptance on the table. Garrett has seconded it, and the approval will happen in theory on December 4th with the executive and
And
finance
Finance
committee.
Committee, yes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And barring
So I
any
misunderstood.
material changes to the existing.
Just
draft.
trying to go with the flow, Forrest.
Sounds good. Further discussion,
Appreciate it.
questions from anyone else on this matter? All clear on it? Okay, then everyone in favor, please say aye, raise your hand. Aye. And anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. All right, thank you. And thank you, Kyle and Forrest and staff for Trudy and all for getting in on this so quickly. Appreciate it. Very much appreciate it. We'll go on to item 4, minor transportation improvement tip amendment. We have, is that Christine? Help me out on that. Yes.
Yep, that's a consent agenda item that we're talking about, correct?
Yes, we didn't have it labeled as a consent agenda item as such, so I was gonna connect with you. You are the tip amendment agenda 4, make the change detail for fiscal year 25 for fiscal year 24 to 27 tip, the Crescent Connector, Butler Farms culvert upgrade, and both those items are being recommended that we approve those proposed tip amendments. Do you have anything to weigh in on those?
No, I think that we know that the Crescent Connector has been open, but there are some outstanding invoices that need to be paid, and it was funds that was in the tip, but they were not obligated. And then the Butler Farms culvert is a new state grant that South Burlington was awarded.
Recording in progress.
Very good. As this was originally planned to be a consent item, we'll be looking, however, for
I think we
motion.
need to move approval, Mr. Chair, and I would
Yes,
do
we
that.
do. Thank you, Jeff. And second?
Chris, this is
accept
Bard. I'll second that.
I got Miles's hand in the air though, so Miles, wait, appreciate it. Thank you, Bard. We'll keep you on the bench for a moment. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand. Anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. Okay, thank you, thank you. We'll move on to item 5, the draft fiscal year 25 through 28 transportation improvement program, another tip item.
Before we move on, Mr. Chair, just a note that Garrett didn't vote because it was MPO.
Okay.
That wasn't mentioned, so don't want it in the minutes that I voted for it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And this is an MPO item number 5 as well. We'll be looking to open the public hearing on the tip. And motion to do so.
Meeting.
Thank you, Catherine. And a second. Thank you, Jackie. All those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. And Garrett, we note that you're not voting on this one.
Me too. I'm Miles. Miles can't vote on this either.
Okay, well, then could you have approved the seconding of the minor tip amendment? We'll put Bard back on as the second for that item there. Thank you, Bard. I knew I had you on the bench for a reason. So that was Bard seconding the motion on item number 4. So are there any members of the public here? There are. Okay, should we have them shall we review the draft first, Charlie, and then ask for public comment, or would the public like to?
I have a couple quick slides if you want to go over them.
Sure, let's do that, and then we'll get to the members of the public. Thank you.
Okay, do we see that?
I don't see it yet. Now we do.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, my Zoom is acting up, but that is to be expected, I suppose. You see the tip, right? Now I have a bunch of other stuff open, but
Yep.
So anyway, okay, so we had a presentation last month on the transportation improvement program where we went through it. So I'm just gonna do a very brief overview, and as we talked about before, very large program here. 417 million was the dollar amount of this tip, which is higher than what we have had. This table shows, or this chart shows, the last 10 years of tips compared to the current 4 years, which are in the shaded piece. And as you can see, like at FY23, the numbers went up quite a bit. That's when the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, was passed. And also our tip follows the needs for the projects that are ready for construction. So at that time, we had some projects that were being developed over a number of years that were in the implementation phase. So quite a bit higher for this 4 years. It's kind of driven largely by some very large projects. The largest project on the tip right now is the Main Street Winooski River Bridge project at 58 million. That is funded with about 20 million, a little over 20 million of federal grants. There's a total of over $80 million of grant projects in this tip. So that really helps to leverage the other federal funds. And then this table shows the other larger projects that we're familiar with if anyone wants to talk about them further. A couple of these, the Reconnecting Downtown Burlington and the East-West Alternative Transportation Crossing, which is the bridge over I-89. Those are grant projects as well. So that was will make some benefit for Burlington and South Burlington. We look at projects in 9 different categories. This is just really a way that we can kind of track the spending in different categories. And this just lists what the categories are. And this chart shows this funding across the categories. The largest is bridge culvert, and that is driven partly by the Main Street Bridge that we talked about before. There's also some interstate bridge rehab projects that are coming up in 2028, as well as just a number of smaller bridge projects that are just time for their regular maintenance. The next category, new facility, major roadway upgrade. That's completion of Champlain Parkway, exit 17, a little bit more for Crescent Connector, and then Rail Yard Enterprise really makes up that category. So this public hearing was noticed in the Burlington Free Press following our public involvement plan. And the notice went to the communities. And yeah, so that's it. Does anybody have any questions on the document?
And feel free, if there are members of the public with questions, to weigh in at this point. Speak up. I'm not seeing, I haven't got the full range of folks, but I'm not seeing anyone with questions. Christine.
Yeah, there are a few members of the public here. Connor or Rich, did you plug in here to make comment on the tip?
No, I'm good. Just observing. Thanks, Mike.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And did we check in on Rich? I haven't got the full Hollywood Squares to see.
Apologies for moving it around.
No, that's okay. So one of those, like,
hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move we close the public hearing.
Okay. Fair enough. A second, please.
This is Bard. I'll second that, Chris.
Any further discussion or comment before we close the public hearing? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
As an MPO action. Sorry, Garrett. And all those abstaining or saying nay, please speak up.
And Christine, you can stop sharing.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of the FY 25-28 tip and the planning process certification.
Which she was flipping through quickly.
Second.
Second. Thank you, Andy. Further discussion? Anyone want to see the planning process certification again? It went by at hyper speed. No? Absent that, everyone in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 Anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. Again, MPO action. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 6, regional dispatch debriefing with our guests from South Burlington, City Manager Jesse Baker and Assistant City Manager Steve Locke. Did I get that right?
You did get that right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jesse Baker. I serve as the city manager in South Burlington. My deputy city manager and fire chief Steve Locke is at the airport going through security and will jump on as soon as he can. But I am happy to get started whenever you're ready.
Well, we are ready. We had a member who was, I think, concerned, if not distraught. Michael, you're here, I think, tonight from Heinsberg, where we had been working on regional dispatch and that had fallen apart. And so we wanted to get an update on where we were with that and how we might best be moving forward to help all the communities in Chittenden County. Is that a fair summary, Michael?
Yeah, I came in late to the process, so just if you could tell me how this idea started and the original participants might be a good place to begin.
Sure. So why don't I kind of give the overview of where we've been and where we are right now, and then I'm happy to answer any more specific questions. Does that work, Michael?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Great. So as I said, my name is Jesse. I'm the city manager in South Burlington. I should note that a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is from prior to my time in South Burlington when I was city manager of Winooski. I was also involved at that point. And my deputy manager who will join us, Steve Locke, was involved in South Burlington, but was also the fire chief in Burlington previously and served this effort in his role there. So we're kind of covering 3 different communities with this conversation. So the idea of having a regional dispatch system to provide regional emergency police, fire, EMS dispatching service in Chittenden County has been under discussion for 5 decades. Many elected officials and chiefs and managers have been interested in this for a very long time. I think this is a great case example of how regional service provision in Vermont under statute is a challenge. So that's kind of the narrative I'm going to share with you tonight. Okay. So when I joined Winooski in this effort in 2017, there was at that point a joint survey committee that had been established between several different regional communities looking at the possibility of starting up this regional dispatch effort. That culminated, I'm going to kind of skim through a lot of work that was done by a lot of folks, but that culminated in a vote on Town Meeting Day 2018, so March 6, 2018, by 7 different communities to consider joining a union municipal district for the purposes of providing regional dispatch at the county level. Just a reminder that what this in Vermont, how this works is all 911 calls go to PSAPs or public safety answering points. They are then directed to the community, either directly deployed if it's a state police or small community call, or transferred to another agency where service might be provided. So in South Burlington, what that means is I'm in South Burlington, I dial 911. My call is answered by a PSAP. I am then transferred to the South Burlington Dispatch Center at 19 Gregory Drive. I tell them what my issue is again, and then they dispatch the relevant public safety officers. And I am told that Steve is here as well. So Steve, jump in when I say something wrong. So on Town Meeting Day, 2018, 6 of those 7 communities voted to join a newly to be created Union Municipal District. Those were Burlington, Colchester, Milton, South Burlington, Williston, and Winooski all passed the item. Shelburne did not pass the item that night, which may have been influenced by the fact that Shelburne is already a PSAP center for Chittenden County. So that kicked off from 2018 to 2022. That group of people convened now as the Chittenden County Public Safety Authority, a union municipal district created under state statute, spent those years, in addition to dealing with the pandemic, building program budgets, building plans, coming up with staffing models, building relationships, and amassing funding. Throughout those conversations, we understood the total budget to implement CCPSA to be about $3.5 million, and we're able to amass about $2 million in grant funding and municipal commitments to execute. In late 2022, as all the municipalities were building their FY24 budget and still very much coming out of COVID, one of our significant communities, and by significant, I mean calls for service significant, Colchester was not able to fund that contribution, and thus pretty significantly stopped the process because it was putting a very significant financial burden on the other communities. So while this Union Municipal District still exists, it is, I would say, in a latency period at the moment, and the district has, the authority has made a commitment to one another to make a decision around the end of 2025, so about a year from now, about options for moving forward. That specifically is related to the fact that all the communities that are currently in have dedicated funding to CCPSA that is now sitting with CCPSA. So a decision at some point needs to be made about what to do with that funding. So as we came out of 2022 and realized that, and I should also note, in 2022, we were right on the cusp of hiring. We were actually about the meeting where we were informed that Colchester would not be funding. We were convened to discuss an offer of employment to a director to run CCPSA. So we had gotten pretty far in this process of building this second municipality, or this sixth municipality. At that point, when we realized that this wasn't going to move quickly, South Burlington, and now I can only speak for South Burlington, not necessarily for the CCPSA, decided we were at a point with our dispatch center where we were at the end of the useful life for some of our equipment and technology. So we did a pretty significant upgrade to our dispatch center, including moving to a computer-aided dispatch system for our fire and EMS calls, as well as upgrading all of our terminals and standing up enough terminals that we could start providing services for other folks. So we have completed that transition work and are now in the process of thinking about how we go about offering other services. So that really lays out two different models of providing regional services. One is through a Union Municipal District. One is through a contracting relationship. We have not actually entered into a contract with another community yet, but we as South Burlington have an interest in doing that. So that's the history of where we are now. Steve and I have some lessons learned we'd like to share, but why don't I pause there and see if there are questions about the history?
If you would, can you explain where Shelburne is now and where it had to fit in as a cog in this whole picture?
So Shelburne was very actively engaged in the Joint Survey Committee, and their community did not pass the town meeting day ballot item to join the Union Municipal District in 2018. So they had considered joining, put it on the ballot, and decided not to. As I mentioned, I didn't manage Shelburne. I don't have inside information on Shelburne. I can't speak for them, but my guess is that that was primarily due to the fact that they are already a PSAP center. So they already, to a certain extent, benefit from a type of regional service provision. There was some discussion in the Joint Survey Committee and in the CCPSA, the Union Municipal District, about if CCPSA was stood up, CCPSA would be potentially the direct referral for the majority of calls within the state of Vermont, i.e. may quickly become could quickly become the biggest PSAP in the state. So there were conversations at that point of, if that were to happen, would the E911 board considering merging or partnering Shelburne with CC or moving the PSAP to CCPSA. And then at that point, there may be an opportunity for Shelburne to join into CCPSA at some point in the future.
All right, so I was just trying to clear up. Shelburne takes calls right now from outside the 6 or 7 communities and processes them regionally in effect for some of the towns.
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure how I approach that. Go ahead, Michael.
Shelburne.
Well,
just,
actually, go ahead, Charlie.
I was just going to let folks know Shelburne's service now covers a lot of southern Chittenden County and northern Addison County.
Yeah.
So I think they provide service to 30 or 40 emergency responding organizations in that territory.
Yeah.
So just
Maybe a
FYI.
model for South
Including
Burlington.
Under Hill and Jericho Fire Department.
Oh, thanks, Brett.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
I was going to say, explain that same thing because Heinsberg was contracting with Shelburne, and those are people that they have in the office, and it would have been a big financial impact to they were very much against the idea. I know that Shelburne was very much against the idea of joining this. So when Colchester walked away, what happened? The funding really came to a stop or something like that?
Yeah, so when Shelburne, not Shelburne, when Colchester, did you ask about Shelburne or Colchester?
No, I just was updating on Shelburne. Colchester really threw a curveball at everybody.
Yes, Colchester threw a curveball to everyone, but I mean, remember at that time, this was the fall of 2022. We were still very much coming out of the pandemic. Revenue budgets were very tight, expenditure budgets were very tight, and they made a really tough financial decision at that point not to fund the CCPSA allocation at that point. I also, am a little remiss in not saying earlier, one of the biggest challenges in this implementation, I guess this is more on the lessons learned side, is to build up this type of union municipal district or alternative service provision. You're running the same service doubly in community. So you are both operating your own dispatch centers, paying the staff, paying the equipment, paying the utilities charges, all of that. The communities are individually already paying that. And you're paying to stand up a brand new service provision. If you can imagine, what this would mean to transition from individual municipal dispatch centers to a regional dispatch center, that's not something you can shut down for a month and a half while you stand up something else. It's really a flip of the switch. And that means you're paying double to operate and build at the same time. So it's, 3.5 million, it's quite a big undertaking. Chief Locke, do you want to add to that?
Well, in addition, in almost every community but Burlington, those same people often answer the phones in the police department for their non-emergency line or other services within the community. They staff a window, and so almost every community was going to have to hire an additional person to do those tasks. So at the end, it's expensive, but it is, the value is obviously there, but it's pricey
to get started.
So to go back to your question, so when in that fall of 2022, when the FY24 allocation wasn't awarded by Colchester, the decision by the board was made, okay, let's pause for the time being, keep the Union Municipal District operational as a governance model, hold the governance model in case there was an opportunity to come back to it in the future if additional funding sources were realized. At the time, there was also a pretty significant bill in the legislature about funding regional dispatch and exploring regional dispatch. So that was the decision at the time, and that's kind of where we are now. The governance structure still exists. There's still a conversation happening at the legislature about models for regional dispatch in the future. And we're all running our individual dispatch centers, and South Burlington has modernized our center in case we have the opportunity to provide services in the future.
Okay.
So if I can, if I can kind of transition into lessons learned, a few more lessons learned. Not only is it very complicated to kind of build the airplane as you're flying it, if you will, and prepare for that, both with money and staff. As the chief said, it is quite expensive to do that, to build and fly at the same time. I would also say that communications is a big challenge. One of the challenges with the union municipal model that's under state statute is that governance structure requires repeated votes to fund and to participate over the course of many years. So in order to be successful, the organizations really have to make sure all of the elected officials are on board, all of the managers, police chiefs, and fire chiefs are on board. Staff understands what's happening and is willing to stay committed because, across the board, there are about 40 or 50 dispatchers in Chittenden County that we needed to operate the system, whether they were municipal employees or union municipal district employees, and of course, funders and grantors who were participating in our project. So it's a huge amount of coordination and buy-in that needs to be developed and maintained over time. And then finally, again, going back to the union municipal governance model, while it is a great option to have in state statute because there is not another option it is the primary option in statute to provide regional services. It doesn't create governance structures that allow communities to join and then delegate authority in a more simplified way. So it really requires all of those individuals, all of those elected officials and professionals to really stay as part of the governance structure across very different communities, which is quite a challenge. Steve, is there anything you want to add from a lessons learned perspective?
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, especially as you take changes in managers and fire chiefs and select board members, city council members, trying to keep everyone engaged and pulling in the same direction, and over several years proved, was a substantial challenge, and a little bit of pushback didn't take a lot of pushback to derail progress.
Okay.
Is it fair to say under lessons learned that you'll be testifying in Montpelier under the County and Regional Governance Study Committee as they look for input?
Certainly if invited, we would be. The chief and I both have spent a lot of time testifying on the regional dispatch conversations in the past, and we'll continue to do that. But I think as Vermont explores different models, dispatch and several other shared services models are great examples to look at.
And gut feel, looking at the decision for 2025, do you have a sense? Pull the plug and everybody goes contracting with whomever has the biggest, newest equipment?
I don't think we've had that. I certainly can't speak for any other community, actually, nor for my community at this point about what our 2025 approach will be. I think certainly among the manager community, and I think among the chiefs community, but I'll let Steve weigh in. We do a lot of partnership now across communities at that professional level. So certainly there remains a commitment to thinking about how we have shared services, how we're finding efficiencies. I don't think that's going away. Whether we can do it under complicated governance structures is the question mark. Steve, do you want to add something from the chief's perspectives?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, I think the only way we see success is if the study committee and what the legislature is currently working on comes out with some sort of funding system that allows for the technology to be provided. If that's done, then perhaps it lowers the cost and it takes away some of the hurdles. It could come together. Otherwise, I think it will be a significant challenge to see us moving, with this model.
Fair enough. And then a further question, even though this is regional dispatch, Jesse, the issue of dispatching ambulances from Essex to Virgins, for instance, the regional models don't necessarily have anything for that. Even if this was the solution with the CCPSA, that still wouldn't resolve the issue of UVM ambulances sticking within Burlington, for instance, or South Burlington ambulances sticking within South Burlington, and Essex being the one that would respond to a Virgins call and things of that sort. What do you know about that issue, and how does that potentially get resolved, where towns have their own zip code centric views of things in some cases.
Steve, I'm going to look to you on this one. I don't know much about Virgins or Essex and how they dispatch EMS. I think we all have a commitment to mutual aid, but I do think it's a very different model when it's a municipally based full-time professional model versus a variety of other models. But Steve,
It's rare I get the fire chief himself. So
I think there's two. I think there's two different things perhaps in play. One is, you know, each community gets to pick who their ambulance service is, and sometimes for a contracted service, you may see, you know, St. Mike's used to go to Heinsberg, so they would go through Williston to get to, and go through South Burlington really to get through to Heinsberg. So I think communities can select who their primary service provider is. But then secondly, that in this area, and there's a deployment model that says if primary is not available, who number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the model is actually built out for 10 ambulances deep. So that's right now that's all done manually, except for in Burlington and South Burlington, who have that built into a computerized system that says, hey, if ambulance 1's not available, then this is the number 2 truck, the number 3 truck, 4 truck, up to 10. So that is done countywide or district-wide, EMS district-wide.
Thank you, because you know that's something that you know, as with the infrastructure, isn't considered. I think when we do the regional dispatch, and you just described how nitty-gritty and manual it's being done. So thank you, I appreciate that. Even though it's off topic for what we were talking about.
And Chris, just to be clear, that was part of the conversation. Regional dispatch would have dispatched ambulance service also.
Automated, something that right now is still being sort of
with a more automated system than exists for most
rather than having pull cards up on a board.
Yeah, I'm not misspeaking there, am I, Steve?
No, you're not. And today, Burlington, South Burlington, Burlington know the status of each other's ambulances as well as UVMs, and our systems automatically dispatch each other's communities when they need a shared ambulance or UVM's ambulances. So we've put the technology in those communities that we know where our units, each other's units are at any given time, and automatically just share them and dispatch them without a phone call ever being made.
No, that's heartening, I think. Michael?
So I understand municipalities. Talk to me about the rural towns and how does that work in terms of regional? I hear this all the time. We need to do more regional service stuff, or services, not stuff. And it sounds like it's going to take, anything would be very expensive, and the governance process is cumbersome, if not difficult at best. So how would you move forward with something like this? I mean, this to me is a great example of a learning curve here. And I still hear about regional services, but I don't see how it's going to work, to be honest with you. And how is it paid for? I don't know those answers. I don't even know if I know the right questions, to be honest with you.
One of the challenges, and Jesse knows this way better than I, but without lacking the county form of government, you cannot apply a county tax. I think the courts are the only thing that gets a county tax. But if we were able to spread a tax out over that way, it would make it so much simpler when you're trying to figure out and distribute a cost for a program evenly. That's done on a regional basis.
Yeah, I would add to that. And I think, Michael, what you're describing is exactly what the legislature is grappling with under their regional dispatch bill as well. This looks very different in population centers versus very rural Vermont, where there are nonprofit service providers or a different type of government providing, or type of organization providing a core municipal service. I guess the other side of the equation, that as a larger municipality, I think it's important to mention, is that the larger municipalities in theory are also a bit double paying for this, because we are paying for KESAPs that answer 911 calls and direct them to us. And then we are also paying for dispatch centers that in our population centers that are answering those calls and deploying the resources. Whereas in the rural communities, there is a the state funds are paying for both. So I think that there's a very complicated web of revenue streams and ability to tax and expenditure streams that really needs to be addressed at the state level or the county level.
Let's go to Bard, who had his hand up first, then Charlie, then Garrett.
Well, a couple of quick comments from Richmond. You know, it strikes me, having been an observer of, I think these each have their own sets of opportunities and obstacles between dispatch, fire, police, and ambulance rescue. So, and things have evolved in a perhaps unplanned way. An example, Richmond Rescue serves 6 or 7 of the peripheral communities. So that grew up by itself. It's a private nonprofit. It's a separate organization. It just illustrates how things evolved, and you end up where you are partly by accident. And then to undo that and move to something else is different or presents challenges. So another example of that is there has been at least a medium-term relationship now between Richmond and Heinsberg around policing. We have a shared chief and some shared coverage, but we're really sort of flying by the seat of our pants because one of the obstacles is a collective bargaining agreement that, if we're fully staffed, is going to throw some obstacles in the way. So I guess from where I sit, it just looks like each one of these has its separate thing or separate obstacles and opportunities. We actually saw the regional dispatch as sort of the tip of the spear, or the point of the spear is like, oh, if we could solve governance and financing there, other things might follow. And now it seems like, okay, well, if that's not going to work, do we move, as Jesse just described, more to like, hey, if we have county government that could have taxing authority, that might be a vehicle. But I'll say we've also stumbled across this where people want what they want, but they also don't want to pay for it, you know? So that's this fundamental challenge as you go down this path of, it's almost like healthcare where there's the 3-legged stool of cost, quality, access. Well, which one do you want? And if you want all 3, really, you want really good quality and really good access, you're going to have to pay more. And maybe healthcare is a dangerous thing to talk about in our current environment as it consumes more and more of our budgets. But that's what it looks like to me, that each one of these systems, they're not a single system between police, fire, rescue, ambulance. And so maybe someday they will be, but it sure doesn't feel that way at the moment.
Thank you, Garrett.
Sorry, just trying to click the right unmute button. Now, wasn't Charlie first? Or,
I think Charlie deferred to everybody who had their hand up.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Looking at some of the outlying towns, I can address a little bit of that. Huntington has an agreement with Richmond Rescue. Buell's Gore has agreements with Bristol Rescue because that's the closest, so it's outside the county, and also with Richmond. But fire for the Gore is through Starksboro, once again, outside the county. When you start getting in the corners, the borders, it may not make sense to have it be only county based. You know, for example, obviously the Gore is an anomaly in many ways, but our shortest border is the one with Chittenden County, and our longest is Washington, and second longest is Addison. So that, you know, having it be just the county doesn't always make sense. The other one I'd toss out is that Essex Rescue, another private one like Richmond, also covers Westford and parts of Underhill. So those are within the county, but there are lots of different pieces and parts.
Oh, thank you. And Brad, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me? Yeah, so I agree with Bard. we're definitely, everything's parsed out. I also agree with Garrett that I don't think this is a countywide, you shouldn't look at this countywide. And I also want to correct Jesse a little bit. So the state doesn't pay for our dispatch, you know. So to Bard's point, we've got a convoluted system. Essex Rescue gets dispatched. You know, you call the 911 center. If rescue is involved, Essex Town dispatches Essex Rescue. If it's a fire situation, we pay for dispatch through Shelburne. We pay for that as a municipality. So the state doesn't pay for that. But it's definitely a convoluted system. It should seem like all emergency services should be under one dispatch. It'd be more efficient. This, in my mind, is a state problem. And don't pin yourself into county based. You know, it's like we're often like, if an emergency service happens in Underhill, Fairfax might show up, Cambridge might show up, Richmond might show up. So it's not, get out of the countywide mindset and think about more geographically how things fit. So this is a huge problem, and it's just going to get larger. So that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you. And Charlie, did you have any thoughts you wanted to share? I'm sorry, Benjamin, let's get you on.
Yeah, just two notes. I know that Westford also relies on Fairfax Rescue a fair amount, and they're also in the process of being some tertiary backup for certain calls with the fire department or volunteer fire department for Underhill. And we actually have been looking at the challenges with dispatch for these services. We know that Essex has a lot of challenges financially. And I think I could sum up our select board's perspective on this, that the state really needs to take a look at this and not just stop at a county level because of the complexities. Thank you.
Fair enough. And Michael.
Yeah, could you just remind me again, what is it, the call center and the dispatch? There's two separate centers, two separate things, entities.
So when you call 911, your call in Vermont, your call is going to go to one of 6 places, and then from there it is then transferred to the appropriate dispatch center, unless you are dispatched by that one of those 6 PSAPs. So if you're in Shelburne's catchment area, which is the smallest catchment area in the state, if your call goes there, then they're processing it and dispatching it. But if you live in South Burlington, your call is going to go to the Williston PSAP primarily, unless they're busy. They process it and then they transfer that call to the South Burlington Dispatch Center. So it depends really where you are.
So why aren't they the same?
So
Yes.
when the 911 center,
I mean, I don't understand why you have to call somebody twice. I mean,
you don't. You don't. This all happens seamlessly and within about 71 seconds on average. So
that's fine, but I don't know why there's two different places.
Well,
so there really are 2 different things. I'm an advocate of one 911 center.
Okay, so am I think.
and Michael, if you read the history of on the website, the webpage I posted into the chat, you'll see conversation on that exact point. Like that was some of the initiative and drive behind exploring this and seeing if we could do it. And you know, and look at the early history, you can see some of those like those issues coming up. And you know, honestly, there were a lot of issues, a lot of benefits that could have come out of this right now. You know, the dispatchers in individual communities, you don't really have any career track, right? There's like maybe one supervisor and, you know, a handful of dispatchers. So one of my hopes was like, oh, that this was going to be more of a career track for dispatchers. You know, nobody was going to lose their job. It was going to just be working for a different employer. So, and I think, Chris, the point I was going to make is just how much time like that we spent at the RPC supporting this effort of, you know, 2 years at the outset. just to kind of facilitate. And we played just a kind of neutral facilitator role, I think. I don't know, Steve or Jesse, weigh in if you think it was worse than that, but just trying to help convene, because it was, as Jesse mentioned, we had multiple, before we even got to a town vote, there was 2 years of effort to get to a town vote. That's how complicated not just the subject is, but just the governance structure situation. And then it was a lot of time after the vote trying to figure out if we could get it going. So I just want to just give you all a sense of just how much this one service, trying to get it to work better, just kind of hurdle after hurdle after hurdle that you got to leap over to try to get something done. And
it's
and
just taken
also
one broken twig and the whole thing falls apart. Yes.
And I also want to just make sure people have clear in their heads, because I saw some pushback about this being a county-wide service. That's a little bit, I think we're confusing two things that are going on. One is we're talking about the towns that already had dispatchers working together to form a combined dispatch and hopefully 911 center, as Steve was just saying, and that it would be one call. And you get your 911 call answered and somebody gets dispatched all together. And then there would still be that contracting situation that you're talking about in the more rural towns, just like you contract with Shelburne, or some people contract with St. Albans, or wherever those contracts are. Those are the two that are top of my mind or closest. But that kind of contracting situation for the smaller towns would likely continue, because the demands and needs are smaller, and they didn't have staff in the game or in the mix, right? So I don't know. I'm happy to take questions on that, but because I was taking it into a little bit different area, but I don't. And also what you described, multiple of you described about, you might get fire from one town or ambulance from another town. That was similar to what Steve talked about of which ambulances are available. Like all that mutual aid stuff that happens in the public safety community would still be happening under this kind of model. That wouldn't go away by any stretch of the imagination. It was just kind of evolving it, not doing away with what's going on in the rural towns. Does that make sense? I'm looking kind of at more Brad, who's I know in the nitty gritty of this.
Okay. Well, I think we've gone as far as we can, unless we get into communication unions districts, which are a whole nother web, correct?
Yeah, they're actually making some progress there. So yeah, if you have an extra $3.5 million or so, please let these guys know. They'd be very happy to take that check.
But
and thank you, Jesse and Steve. Steve has been the chair of the Chittenden County Public Safety Authority. I don't know, almost from the outset. Steve, I can't remember. Maybe
well, it's been 7 years of my life that I'm not sure I'll ever get back, but it was a lot of fun.
There's no going back.
All right, I'm gonna go.
Thank you,
Steve. Safe flight.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it.
Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Yeah. We'll move on to item 7, staff introductions, and welcome to Kate McCarthy. Sorry to drag you out till 7 o'clock on this.
No, thank you for making time on the agenda. Happy to be here. Happy to jump right in, immerse myself in a board meeting and see the richness of what we do. Much of which I knew about, but I'm learning all the time. So again, thanks for the chance to say hello to you here this evening. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from, some of my experience, and what I'll be doing here at CCRPC. So I grew up in Southern Maine, but I've lived in Northern Maine, Texas, Washington, Scotland, Ireland, little time in Minnesota, New York. But all of my planning career has been here in Vermont. And I actually started my planning career in the Regional Planning Commission world down at the Wyndham Regional Commission in Brattleboro. After that, I worked for about 10 years with the Vermont Natural Resources Council, directing the Sustainable Communities Program. And that had a very strong planning thread with going out and doing zoning technical assistance across the state. But then also working in the State House with the legislature on land use planning and policy, including Act 250 policy. And one of the things that is already very interesting to me, and actually one of the reasons that I was very interested in this job, is that a lot of that work is coming to fruition right now with Act 181, with the conversations we're having about housing as a state that are up a notch or three since 10 years ago. And I'm really excited to be at CCRPC and kind of on the other side of that conversation, helping be an interpreter for communities, helping out with these future land use maps, helping talk about how growth can meet local goals and the goals that we have as a state. So I'm really excited about that thread through my career, and that I get to do that here at CCRPC. I'll mention I also worked in philanthropy at the Vermont Community Foundation. That's a whole different toolbox for helping communities to be a grant maker. And knowing how much CCRPC provides resources of all types to communities, really glad to bring that experience in as well. You know, coming back to the RPC world for me is a chance to work on things that I really care about. Housing, transportation choice, sustainable communities, connecting communities with resources. It's really the full package. And I'm really, really pleased to be back here using my planning, technical assistance, and policy experience to help out communities. I've worked, you probably could tell from my running through my experience, I've worked statewide for a dozen years or more, and I love that. And I'm really happy to be focusing in on a region that has as much going on as Chittenden County does. And just a little shout out to the staff as a reason for why I wanted to come here as well. In the past dozen years or so, I've worked with over half of the staff here on various projects. And so to come back and be a part of that team was just incredibly appealing. So I'll just take another minute and let you know a few of the things I'll be working on. I will be supporting land use planning with some of that bread and butter work, planning and zoning, including starting out with supporting a project in Charlotte. I'll be working on project management, and my first foray into that at CCRPC will be with the Plan BTV New North End project, which is just getting underway. And then I'll also, along with my colleagues, be doing outreach for Act 181, future land use mapping, talking about housing, thinking about the future with our municipalities. So really thrilled to be here. Looking forward to getting to know all of you, and happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Great. Are you in the community here in Chittenden County?
I do not. I live in Montpelier.
Oh, wow. And
Yes.
how is that commute in the good time of the year?
So far, so good. Pretty straightforward. And I've found that I'm able to take the bus. The Link Express goes from Montpelier, Medical Center transfer, come down the hill to Winooski. So
beautiful.
Really thrilled that even in a rural state, we can find a way to make transit work.
That Link Express has been a big connection. So
it's great.
We're pleased that some of that works well, especially where GMT is jiggering things around here in Chittenden County for their own issues. Any other questions for Kate or comments? Can you give us a little more on the Plan BTV? What's that? I'm not up on that. Andy probably knows it better.
Sure. So this is an area-wide plan for the new North End. And, you know, there's an update. There will be an update to the comprehensive plan for the municipality, but this is a really area-specific plan for the new North End, taking into account the fact that this is a very different sort of development pattern. It was developed at a different time. It's post World War II, kind of more suburban style development. And as a result, there are great neighborhoods there. It's very appealing for families. There are also some characteristics that that need to be looked at more closely. You know, how do you enhance those neighborhoods and make them more accessible to more people? Given that they're kind of only 2 roads in, how do you make sure those roads are working well for everybody who uses them in different modes? And so it's a look at that. We had a kickoff last week with a planning advisory committee of local residents who are bringing their expertise, people who've lived there 45 years, people who've lived there 1 year, people who were born there, people who weren't. And so it's just going to be, I think, a really good conversation about how to strengthen those neighborhoods, those community centers, and the transportation options for that part of town.
Great. Any other comments or questions for Kate? Go ahead, Andy.
Kate, I'm Andy Monfil. I'm on the Burlington Planning Commission as well, and
Wonderful.
really thrilled that you're helping out with the Plan BTV for the New North End.
Thank you.
It's a big project that we're taking on. We, as you probably know, in Burlington, we've done lots of different planning. We did a comprehensive plan a few years back, and you're right, we're getting ready to do another one. And we've done the Plan BTV for downtown. We've done the Plan BTV for the South End. We've done some others, and after a lot of discussion, we're finally turning our attention to the Plan BTV for the New North End. And again, I'm thrilled that you're able to be a part of that, and the RP and that the Regional Planning Commission is going to be helping with that. So looking forward to working with you on that one as well.
Likewise, thank you, Andy, and thanks for contextualizing it with the other area plans that the city has been doing for different parts.
All right. Well, I hope you'll be ordering enough Sharpies for the Act 181 future land use mapping exercise, because everybody will have an opportunity, I'm sure, to draw their own contours and tell you where things need to be.
We're buying stock in Sharpie.
Indeed. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank
Welcome. Welcome. Let's move on to draft minutes. Agenda item 8, the draft minutes from October 15th.
Move to approve.
Thank you,
I'll
Andy.
second.
Thank you, Catherine. Discussion.
I have one item, and that is on, let's see what line it is I wrote down. 136. Essex is misspelled.
Oh, sure. Add an X at the end, not yes. So,
Yes.
Thank you.
further discussion. Is that amendment okay with you, Andy? All right, thank you. Then all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up.
I'm abstaining. I did not participate in that meeting.
Thank you, Karen.
Same here, Brad Holden.
Thank you, Brad.
Neither did I, Bruce Wilson. I didn't.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate it. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie. I'm sorry. Who spoke
I
up?
was not there.
Oh, Jackie.
Jackie
Thank you.
Murphy.
But Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, even if they're not there, they can still vote on the minutes, correct?
That's
Yeah,
correct,
you-
Chris.
You
Yes.
can, yeah.
So,
Yeah, so those of you that said you're not there, you want to actually be shown as abstaining from the vote?
there were 4 of you.
I would like to abstain, yes. Since
Brad
I was not,
abstained.
I didn't
Karen?
watch the video, I was
Yeah.
not present.
I'd like to abstain. Yeah.
All right, and Bruce,
No. I want to vote on it.
you're gonna vote on it, thank you. Jackie,
I'll abstain.
okay, so 3 abstentions, 1 vote on it, and I'm assuming your vote is in the positive, Bruce.
And Tim, Tim, did I see you wanted to abstain also?
I did, yes. I didn't see
Okay.
it. I was not in attendance.
All right, thank you. So I think we're clear on that, and it's passed regardless. Thank you all. We'll move on to item 9, regional priority project list, and we need some
Oh, I'm
action
sorry,
on-
was there a vote?
Yes, we voted yay, and then there were abstentions after.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Okay, so you should subtract out Tim, Jackie, Karen, Brad, and did I miss anybody? Those were the abstentions. All else was yay. So we were looking at the regional priority. I'm sorry?
Who seconded that?
Oh, that was Andy. Catherine made the motion, Andy seconded.
Or vice versa. Yeah, I think Andy moved and Catherine seconded.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Either way is fine.
Thank you, Maya. So we're at the regional priority project list, and it'll need some action from us. I believe the GBIC generates this, Charlie or Taylor? Who's helping me out?
Charlie, you want me to take it or do you want to take it? All right, I'm taking it. Folks, page 19 of your packet is a little memo explaining what we're going to do tonight and the recommended action. And so every year we work with our partners at GBIC, Greater Burlington Industrial Corporation, to develop the regional priority project list. The regional priority project list is something that GBIC must put together per their agreement with the Vermont Department of Economic Development. This list is supposed to reflect, you know, the kind of the top 10 economic development projects in the county for a scoring system developed by the state. And so GBIC solicits projects from municipalities, from private partners across the region, starting in the summertime. They get applications, they meet with our CCRPC staff, and we review and score them together. We brought this list that you have on page 20 of your packet to executive committee to inform them what the list looked like back in early November. They recommended this list to you folks, and tonight we're looking for this board to recommend to the GBIC board to adopt said list. In terms of the list itself on page 20, yeah, right now there are 10 projects on it. There is one project that is still a question mark. I believe we still, I think, are trying to get confirmation from the city of Burlington that they want the number 9 project on there, or one of the number 7 projects, the Rail Yard Enterprise project on this list. Yeah, if we don't receive confirmation they want the project on the list, that project would be removed and it would be replaced by the Winooski Armory project. That's a project submitted by the city of Winooski to develop, I believe, 30+ units of affordable housing at the former Armory site on LaFountain Street. And so with that, I can share the list if folks want to look at it, or any other discussion. Go ahead, Jeff.
And Taylor, that Winooski project would be number 11 of a second tier of projects that GBIC has. That is a living list. It just doesn't, since it doesn't comport to the top 10 list, there's 11 through 18, 19, or 20. And generally what happens is those 11 through 20 start to move up in the top 10 going forward. It's kind of it's a thing that all the regional development corporations folks do. And we have 12 of them around Vermont that submit that priority list to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development through the Economic Development Department. And then supposedly those projects get lined up in a preferred position for state funding if there's grants or something like that along those lines. So we're telling GBIC, thanks, good list. But from my standpoint, it'd be nice to know what 11 through 20 is.
Sure.
Maybe not for today or this year, but maybe next year we could have that as, this is the top 10, but here's 11 through 20 so that members know all the things that are out there. And of course, new ones can come on too. That could be very important and could displace 11 through 20. It's not like we do 1 through 10, 5 or 6 of them get done and everybody else moves up. It's a living list and it moves around.
Correct. And yeah, the one other thing I'll underscore, thanks, Jeff. I think that's really helpful. And projects that score higher generally are projects that create jobs or retain jobs, and are very close to being shovel ready. So as Jeff mentioned, a lot of these projects start low on the list. As they get shovel ready, they get more points, they move up. I can run through real quick who else is on the list.
Taylor, I'd like just to chime in on the Rail Yard
Sure thing.
Enterprise project. I'm actually a consultant involved with the project, and depending on who you talk to in the city of Burlington, I do know the Department of Public Works is still in favor of this project happening. So I don't think it's the kind of thing that should go off the list. That's, I guess, a personal opinion, but I've heard different voices saying that should still be certainly considered.
And Taylor, go ahead and run through 11 through 18 if you have them there. I thought they had
Sure.
been on the executive board's table earlier this month, but
So 11 would be the Winooski Armory project. That's an affordable housing project. 12 would be Severance Park. That's a traditional PUD in Colchester, about 500 units of new housing. The project that's been actually submitted is for the infrastructure, not for the housing. After that, it's the BTV South End Transit Center parking garage housing childcare project, just not close to shovel ready. That's why that's scored a little bit lower. Below that is the Memorial Block redevelopment in Burlington. Again, not close to shovel ready. We've got the Shelburne Village infill infrastructure project that's working, well, that's really focused on streetscape development in Shelburne. Again, not quite shovel ready. And then lastly, the Perkins Pier redevelopment in Burlington. Not quite shovel ready and not a big job creator there. So That's the list, a little shorter than last year overall. I think that's close to 16, 17 projects total.
Fair enough. Okay, does that work for you, Jeff? Oh, great.
The big thing, Chris, and as Jeff alluded to, is that some state funding programs provide bonus points in their scoring criteria to projects that are on this top 10 list. There's also one large federal grant program, and that's the Northern Border Regional Commission Catalyst grants. That federal grant definitely provides bonus points to the projects that are on this list. And so, yeah.
So we'll need a motion to recommend the GBIC board submittal of the draft regional priority project list to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development at the state.
I would
I'll
move that,
move.
Mr. Chair.
Second.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Garrett. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Everyone gets in on this one. And anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. And boy, I wish they would get the terminology on this east-west alternative transportation thing better, because I can relate to walk, bike, bridge, but when they go on with the 5-word phrase, it stumbles me. All right, we're going to move on to legislative breakfast, which is topics rather, which is also coming up as our next meeting, December 12th, which is a Wednesday morning. Is that correct?
Thursday morning.
Thursday morning.
Yeah, so hopefully everyone has that's here and others who are not have gotten an email from Emma to save the date. And Emma, I guess you actually sent out the actual invitation now, right?
I did, yes, and I'll actually drop the link to RSVP in the chat now too, just so anyone can sign up if they haven't already.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Emma, for doing all the work that you're doing to get that set up and communicated out there. Yeah, we're already starting to get responses from legislators. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting legislative session. Obviously there was, sorry, just to talk little P politics, right? There was clearly, a different legislature is no longer a supermajority. So it's a more balanced legislature, particularly in the Senate. And, that'll change some of the working dynamics there. And, I think largely for the better, and certainly they have to, I think a lot of them heard something of a mandate to deal with the property tax situation and just the cost of living in Vermont generally. Kind of in that context, I'm not hearing a lot of major policy, ideas that are coming to the table so far, at least from folks more connected to Montpelier than I am. But I got a few things. Certainly we've been talking about GMT. Right, Clayton was here last month talking about the transit service. That's one item I think that we'll be have on our list. And I'm sorry, I'm taking some notes while we're talking because this is still a listed process. So, and this conversation is to really get your input on any topics or perspectives on topics that you think we ought to emphasize with the legislators. The second thing I had is I just kind of put it down as housing. They did a lot on housing with the Act 250 bill last year, as well as funding for different housing. I don't think that they're going to want to mess too much with the Act 250 changes that they made. Too much. So I'm sure there may be some tweaks. But the other thing that I'm kind of hearing is that there's likely to be a large money bill to help with housing. And traditionally they've done money that goes right to like affordable housing projects. So it goes through Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and then to like housing developers like Champaign Housing Trust or Cathedral Square. There may be some of that. My sense is that they're also going to look at supplementing that with funding for infrastructure. So like water and sewer infrastructure for municipalities, with the idea that that would buy down the cost or reduce the cost on individual developers by having public infrastructure provided for site development and not be on the back of the developer and thereby reduce those housing costs. So that's kind of item 2. That was a little convoluted, item 2. Any reactions on that one? Thank you, Bard. I know. All right. Now I know we're past 7, so I don't know if we're losing the crowd here. Okay. All right. Garrett says okay. There may be some other. I'm going to try to see if there's some other nuances and try to get a sense of what might be coming out of the administration on that. And the other issue is flooding and resiliency, and I'm not sure exactly what direction that might go. I don't know if people have thoughts about what direction that topic might take in the legislature or should take in the legislature, if you had your way.
I'm hoping Bard had some thoughts on that, as much as I'm hoping Michael was going to put in for regional dispatch.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if he was in favor of regional dispatch.
Oh, no, Michael, yeah, I think he's in favor of more regionalization of services, as I read it.
Yeah.
But Bard might have some thoughts on the flood resiliency.
It's interesting. We actually are still in the throes of an evaluation here in Richmond, but I'll just say one of the tensions I see is it the Winooski River, or is it the Winooski River like waterway, including the hillsides that are sometimes leading to separate flood damage from the Winooski. That's just an overarching thing. And I think it's true of several river valleys in the state where it's the river itself, or is it all the tributaries and floodways that go down into the river?
Yep. It's a whole watershed.
Yeah, the watershed. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's one thing. And I'll say, I think some of this is, frankly, seems to me, unfortunately, kind of irresolvable. If you built your town where Montpelier or Barry are, like you can't move the river, and moving the town is cost prohibitive, or elevating the entire town 10 or 15 feet. I'm not sure what the answer is to that.
I think the state of Massachusetts put about 5 towns underwater to create a reservoir back in the early 1900s. Petersham and places like that that are still underneath the Quabbin Reservoir, but I don't think we're advocating for that here.
Connecticut did a few as well.
Go ahead, Miles.
Yeah. So is Miles. So Charlie and I are both at an Act 250 talk today at the Vermont Development Conference, and there is the attitude that I know Act 181 is very new, but is it too early to start thinking about tweaks to it? I don't know if that's something we push away, but it's just a thought, Charlie.
Yeah, and I've already talked to a couple of legislators about that, how open they might be to that. I think we'll have some cleanup things. I don't know about, I've been using the term, opening the spigot a little bit more. There's definitely some reluctance in the environmental committees to doing that, but I think there will be an ask to do that anyway. So, and I don't think that you all would be opposed to that. I would not think, or I would think not, right? So, okay. Yeah, so yeah, good point, Miles. On the flooding thing, one of the issues that has been happening, a couple issues, is the way Vermont is, very dependent on municipal government to do things. And, FEMA has this trouble when they get here. They're like, well, okay, where's the county? We'll kind of do the stuff through the county. It's like, no, we're going to do it town by town, like the good New England way. But it kind of layers down, and I don't know if this is something the state can address, but like we've done hazard mitigation plans. We've done it together, with all multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan, but it's still pretty cumbersome. We're the only region in the state that does that. Otherwise it's very town by town. But the issues are not town centric. The damage is happening in one town or your specific town, but the causes or mitigation might be upstream in another town. And so some way to be able to look at that, you know, at a watershed level and see where it could be mitigated. Bard, to your point, you know, I'm not sure. Yeah, we're not moving Montpelier or Richmond out of the river area, but there may be more things that could be done. So that's kind of some of the conversation I've been hearing about that. It was like, how do we look at that in a more holistic way? So, and there is a conversation for those of you that are in the Winooski watershed. Hopefully you saw an invitation. Maybe Christine, did it come from you or did it come from Dan?
It came from me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you saw an email, or may have gone to your town administrator or select board chair, they're trying to get all the towns in the Winooski watershed to get together and talk about working together, or participating in a larger analysis of what could happen in that whole watershed. So heads up, I think there's a meeting coming up in December, Christine?
December 4th.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm looking for the invitation right now, and I'm going to put it in the chat when I find it.
Yeah, okay.
Levies are the answer.
I'm sorry?
Levies are the answer.
Levy.
We can be just like New Orleans.
I'm not sure about that. Any other particular or topics? The other one that I had was that we made a couple references earlier in the meeting to that county and regional governance study committee that's happening. They may have some short-term things. They're not supposed to come up with recommendations or their final recommendations until the end of 2025, but there may be some short-term things that get put on the table from there. I'll talk to those folks and get a little bit better sense of what's coming there before we have our breakfast. Any other things?
We need to do our usual spiel about Chittenden County is an important driver of the overall economy, because there still is this Chittenden County gets everything. We got to give the money to everybody else. And what happens is if you underfund the economic engine, you make the pie smaller and everybody has to fight over smaller shares. And the other thing we have to remind them is that our organization can help them with that and other issues in our area of expertise. So we're not just asking them for stuff, we're offering them our expertise. And I think it's important as the legislature turns over that some of the new members need to hear this stuff, because they'll get down here and they'll hear all the anti-Chittenden County crap. And we've got to inoculate against that. And I hate to say it, it is real.
Yep. No, it is real. No, and I don't mean any disrespect to this, the Governor Scott's administration, but there are numerous, more than one grant program where they have specifically kind of moved Chittenden County to the bottom of the priority. And it's very direct, it's very specific. And you know, which I don't want to stop money going to other places, but it's weird when no money comes here.
It's not a zero-sum game. That's what we gotta help them understand that.
I just wrote that down, Jeff, before you said it.
Okay.
Well connected. I'm sorry, Bruce, you had your hand raised a minute ago.
Yeah, thank you. So legislative breakfast, December 12th. Well, first of all, I'm on Green Mountain Transit Advisory for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. I sit on the advisory, and I'm of course RBC Equity Advisory Committee, and I'm also the Human Rights Commissioner for the state of Vermont. And so, diversity, equity, and inclusion should be in all part of every agenda item that we say to the legislature. everything, if you don't want to go long drawn out, everything, long drawn out, you know, subject or project, but it needs to be said to them. About demographics, economics, affordable housing, transportation. And I think that's where probably where we get a big hit at, if we just make sure we include DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion within everything that we say. I don't know what, I would love to see the agenda and our objectives before it's actually firmed up with, you know, the board, and I like to be able to look at it to make sure, because, you know, I have some issues about our last housing event that I went to, and so I just want to make sure that we're who we are in the lead or leaders and with the things that the work that we do, and that diversity, equity, inclusion, like GMT, for instance, they're going there with we're working with them. EAC is working with the JEDI to combine and try to help raise money. So for people like Winooski is affected by bus services. Number 9 bus Winooski is affected because the buses don't run on Sundays, they can cut services in certain places. And so Clayton's one of his big things he want to do is make sure that they understand that it affects people BIPOC. And so I think because of the world and who we are in every state I know are all discussing how we can work with or do or share diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think all the legislators and all the people we elected want to be part of that. So for us, it's a big deal, and because we do it all the time. Every when I'm part of some meeting at EAC or something across the state, and I think that that topic should be included every agenda item we have when we present to the legislative breakfast. And I would love to see the agenda and our objectives before it's actually, you know, ready to go. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Jackie.
Just one thing from Colchester is funding to municipalities who are dealing with the homeless situation. I don't know what that would entail. I mean, I know it's a statewide problem, but there are some municipalities who have really had a lot more impact, and we happen to be one of them because we have a lot of the hotels. So, and I know Burlington would probably say the same thing.
Yeah, thanks for, I did talk to Aaron a few days ago. He brought that up, so thank you for reminding me of that detail. Any other thoughts? So yeah, please, email Chris or me or something if you have other thoughts over in the next couple of weeks before we get there. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And we're going to roll to agenda item 11. I think Ann Nelson's not here because we have a new format. Am I correct, Charlie?
Yeah,
we're
it just
trialing
this.
this.
it just happened that she was out of town today, and so I think we mentioned this last month of like kind of trying just her providing a one-page summary, and let me know or Emma know if you have any questions on. It's it's the last page of your packet.
Yeah,
it is the last page of the packet, and I would be helpful if one could unpack some of the acronyms. I think the last paragraph is REIB in Burlington.
Yeah, that's the Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Office in the city of Burlington.
And then Abundant Sun in the second bullet point under professional development and education. Is anyone aware of what that organization is? It sounds like a great name. But.
Yeah, that's the name of Jude's consulting firm, and they do. I'm probably going to undersell it, but DEI Consulting, and they were the consultant for VLCT, and their Welcoming Communities program there, and so it was just part of who was on that session presenting with her.
Okay, I'm just picking at details. Obviously, I mean the bulk of the work here is obviously the equity action plan and the board and committee code of conduct and the stipend policy, which are all policy related that they're working on, and what Bruce just referenced with Clayton coming and speaking about the service cuts for GMT that are very directly effective for underserved communities. But I am also struck by the language of the Vermont Office of Racial, the first bullet point, the Vermont Office of Racial Equity's apiary for movement builders. And I thought apiary was a wonderful little word. I guess it just means beehive for, there are no other words for it, but one can adapt it for use of building something and lots of movement to build something. So I glimmered on that one. I liked it. I'm sorry, Andy Watts of Essex, go ahead.
Yeah, in our budget discussions for next year, we've been talking about a equity advising person.
Yeah, a shared equity policy advisor, staff
Right.
person that might work here but work for the other towns that subscribe. Yeah.
And so I'm just surprised that the first place I heard about it was in my budget meetings. I haven't heard it discussed here. And is it part of this work, or is it something else? Or
so Andy, and I think I was doing that on purpose just to try to avoid confusion that was not a regional planning commission concept.
Okay.
That was not something that we were driving. I was happy to support it, but it was driven from the municipal managers. Is where that concept came from.
Okay.
And so I just was purposefully silent because it was more municipally driven and not RPC driven, and I didn't want to confuse that.
All right. Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, and for others, particularly the more urban towns have been talking about how to get some, I'll call it fractional equity staffing to kind of help deal with internal issues, and they were thinking like their internal policies and procedures. And so they were kind of asking each other, hey, like, would you be willing to chip in? Would you be willing to chip in? Could 5 towns get together and support a staff person? So I think people are facing some tough budget years. So I'm not sure how that will play out, but there were a handful of towns, Andy, where that was a topic that the manager brought to their select boards or city councils.
And ties into the other regionalization discussions we've had in the union districts.
A little different tack on it, yeah.
Right, but the same idea, which is that, if we work together, we're stronger than if we each work separately.
Yeah, they kind of came from the point of like, none of them could individually hire somebody, but maybe collectively they could, pull together funds to hire one person. And it kind of made sense from in their perspective to have that person housed at the RPC and kind of working in parallel with Ann Nelson and being able to, back each other up and, provide some more staff capacity that could flex in that way. So yeah, we'll see where your budget conversations all land, but I'm not counting on that, Andy. So,
yeah, it sounds like it might be tough to sell.
Yeah. Understood.
The other thing I wanted to comment on is to follow on a little bit on what Bruce was saying about GMT cuts, that in Essex, we're going to lose all SSTA access as well. I don't know how well known that is in the.
Would you lose all SSTA fund or service, or for part?
Well, if they do what they have said that they're going to do, the only part of Essex that will have bus service is the Fort, is going through 40th and Allen. And so you'd have to be 3/4 of a mile from the Fort. So
yeah,
it's true we won't lose all of it, but
most, yeah. Got it.
Wow.
Thank you.
I have to say something. So basically if we choose like a 5 regional whatever it's town type of DEI, I think EAC, I know it's a lot, Charlie, but we should take the lead because we've done a lot of work with different ethnicities and cultural diversities, and it's part of our EAC, and Nelson Stone have done a lot of work. All of this group has done a lot of work for organization, and I let you know it's better that we can act because we have the answers. We do. We have more answers than I said on a lot of different things, anti-racism, school district, but I think if it's gonna happen, it's gotta happen to go like RPC, because I don't want nobody going out there wasting money, just wasting money, just because they come up with a mission goals and objectives or some type of plan. We need to do it we need to help them, we need to take the lead, and they need to listen to us, so that's my guy on that one.
Thank you. Chris, yeah, that's all I have on the equity update.
All right, very good. Let's move on to item 12, which would be back to you, Charlie, in the form of what's going on with building homes together, UPWP, and anything else on the agenda.
Yeah. Sorry, and I'm noting that the letters there start at E, but so we didn't lose a handful of things, but I do want to note first the fatality that happened on Shelburne Road last week, and acknowledge we did get and let you all know, we got that communication, or we got communication directly from Local Motion, asking for kind of all hands on deck task force to address this issue on Shelburne Road. So we have we heard that, but also we're trying to be thoughtful and do the right thing, and not just rush to do something that may not be the right thing. And it's maybe not as simple as the communication might make it sound. And for one thing, we have not heard exactly what the circumstances actually were in that situation. To know, would an engineering solution have helped? I don't know the answer to that question, and I don't know. It'll take a little while to get the report back from the state police. And I'm kind of repeating this based on some of Laney's communication and conversation with VTrans. So we're kind of talking with VTrans and South Burlington, and we'll see where that goes. There is some work that was in this year's work program to look at the safety of bike ped crossings on Shelburne Road in South Burlington. So there was already something, just in case you all as board members of CCRPC get asked about this, South Burlington had already asked for something to deal with safety of those crossings. So that work, and Eleni, I'm kind of looking, I think it hasn't quite started yet, right? But it's fairly imminent.
Yeah, we are about to just develop the scope of work for that. We met with veterans in South Burlington, so we have a pretty good idea what we're doing. We're going to be focusing on just short-term and medium-term kind of solutions. We're not looking to do just long-term plans. We need to do things that we can just be able to implement in the next 5 to 7 years. So we are starting that. I believe that we are meeting for development of the scope in December. So we should be starting it very soon.
Yeah.
Is it true that it happened at 3 o'clock in the morning and the weather was bad?
Yeah.
That's my understanding. Yes.
Yeah. That was my not being very specific, but we want to wait until we really hear more about what the causes were before we start trying to develop solutions, right? And so anyway, that was note one. Building homes together was just a note for you to know that hopefully you saw that press release and stuff. I'm gonna put a link in the chat if you do want to check out more on the building homes together. Not much more to add there unless there are questions on that. And the third item, just a reminder, UPWP applications should be going out Friday or Monday at the latest. Due date is mid-January, so kind of traditional schedule. We're trying to, Eleni, is it fair to say we're trying to simplify or clarify the application a little bit more so that people that are just looking for more technical and data assistance aren't asking a lot of, or we're not asking them to answer a lot of extraneous questions that aren't relevant. Is that fair?
That is fair, yes.
Yeah. So heads up, obviously your town, staff and folks will get that. And that's pretty much all I have at the moment, other than everything else we talked about. So,
Cool.
thank you.
I'll open it up for agenda 13. Any members items that they'd like to bring forward? Absent any there, I'll.
I
direct
move we
you
adjourn.
To, well, let me go through 14 first.
Oh.
Thank you for the item 15.
Oh, I mean,
motion.
that, you're just gonna read what's on the thing that everybody should have read already.
Well, I'm also going to remind you what time to show up on Thursday, December 12th. Charlie, is it 7:30? Or Emma?
Thanks.
7:30.
I'm sorry?
It's 7:30.
7:30. We don't want to be too early.
Yeah, so that, for those of anyone who hasn't come to a legislative breakfast before, yeah, it's 7:30 to 9. Kind of do try to get there as close to 7:30 as you can. We try to grab some food and do a little mingling and start the program pretty sharp at 8. So thanks,
And again-
Chris.
And again, your 8 committee reports are there with links in your document, along with backup in item 6. Deep dive on regional dispatch. You can find their minutes right up through their last meeting in June of 2023. Moving to 15, I will accept Jeff's motion to adjourn with Garrett's second for same. And if there's any further discussion, stick around after saying aye and hitting the leave meeting button. Otherwise, then tell us why
Aye.
you want to hang around.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a
Thanks,
good night.
everyone.